Okay, so this is the Silverfire stove. I think it's called the Survivor, and it's an update to an old stove that I used to have by Stove Tech. And I'm going to cook something on this and kind of explain some of the features here. So the idea here is to be able to make really efficient use of some of this kindling that I have. Basically, small things you can burn in these so-called rocket stoves. You can burn, you know, yard waste, all sorts of things, but I happen to have some scrap wood and then some kindling that I've made up. And this is probably more wood than I will use by a lot to cook this one pot meal I'm going to make here. So to start this, you can see I've just kind of got a Vaseline cotton ball. I'm going to pop that. And I'm just going to slide this in there. Now remember that flame likes to climb, so I'm going to give it some stuff to climb. This is some cut up cardboard, just a piece of paper. You don't want to stuff it too full, or you'll impede some of the airflow that you need. I'm going to put a couple more of those sticks in there just so that something catches and goes down in there. And it takes a couple minutes for this to kind of burn to the point where it's burning clean and it's doing what it's supposed to do. Now this system claims to have some secondary burn characteristics, or if you want to interpret that another way, some wood gasification, meaning that the byproducts of burning here get burnt as they go further up the chimney. And in theory, what you'll end up with, I'm going to put a little bit more cardboard in there, is completely total use of your fuel source and really efficient use of your heat, so that you burn less fuel and can still cook the same amount of stuff. Now you see, this is almost certainly going to be more wood than I need to cook my dinner. And compare and contrast that to if I were to, say, make a big campfire and try to cook over that. So everything that I put into the stove, it'll be on film, and you can watch this dwindle as time goes on, but it looks like we're just about ready for me to start cooking here. So I've dropped this little door down. Every now and again you want to just push your fuel forward as it's consumed, and then close this door. That's supposed to make it more efficient. So I've got a big heavy Dutch oven with some hamburger and a little green pepper and a little onion in there. I'm going to put this over the fire and we'll see how this goes. So this stove burns incredibly hot. Just fair warning. You could use less fuel, you could use more fuel, and maybe alter that a little bit. But I like to use something a little heavier on here so that you don't get like burnt areas in the food. This'll heat it a little bit more evenly. Let's see how we're doing for fuel here. So I've got a nice fire there. That's adequately burning now. And we'll let this heat up. I can already hear it. I'm going to need to stir this in a second. Be right back. So this is actually my third time using this particular stove. The first time was just basically to fire it up and see how well it performed. Just how hard it was to light and things like that. As you can see, it's pretty easy. The second time, which was last night, I made chicken and potato curry that some lady in Guyana taught me how to make, and it turned out really well. Tonight we're just making the old standard classic kid food goulash. I know obviously this isn't real goulash, because real goulash is Hungarian and has a lot of paprika. This is kind of the Midwest American version of it, which is pretty far from that. Just going to check my fuel here. Make sure everything's pushed forward the way it needs to be. Eventually it kind of starts burning out along the sticks. I've got plenty of fire going in there. So this model differs quite a bit from the StoveTech model in that it's a stainless steel design and it's half of the weight. The other thing they've done is they've added some secondary airflow in there to help increase the burn, and also supposedly to make that secondary burn better. Eventually it burns fairly clean, although I am getting some soot out of there right now. That may just be some of the stuff that I used to start it just burning off the rest of the way. So how did they make it half the weight? Well, the original StoveTechs had a clay liner, and basically the entire inside of this was lined with clay, and instead of using clay they used like perlite and then I think some other insulation. Now this is not version 1 of this particular stove. Now the guy that was one half of StoveTech left and started making this stove. I'm not sure why he left, but he did, and made some improvements. One is this kind of drop down door to, you know, keep things a little hotter in the firebox. I like this little shelf for your kindling. The old one was like a wire grate and I lost it, of course, but this one, as soon as I'm done burning, just fits right back inside there, which is nice. Got to check it again. So cooking really well. Just that little amount of wood and my hamburger's almost browned. Won't be long and I'll start adding the other stuff to this, but we're not quite there yet. So for the weather conditions right now, it's about 38. Obviously it's above freezing. You can hear rain dripping off of my roof. I'm just in my backyard here. Gonna push some of this stuff in, and I'm gonna add a little bit more fuel now. So maybe I'll add this one. This should burn a little longer. You're supposed to use fuel that's about this size. There's like a little thing there, and it's like about the size of a Sharpie is the size of fuel you're supposed to use. You can use that. I've certainly used that, but I like these bigger sticks a little better, a little bit less fuss. Once you get it going real well, then you can switch to a little bit bigger stuff and still maintain a good fire. Now you can see it's burning very clean. There is going to be soot on my pot, but you can see there's not a lot of smoke and things like that coming out of there. Continuing to cook here. Let's see if I need to slide in the kindling a little bit, and I do. Let's look, see how we're doing. Okay, well, the hamburger's browned, and I can add some more of the rest of my ingredients here. I like things that I can make in one pot when I'm camping or when I'm, you know, not in my usual environment. Like say if I am in a hotel and I want to cook something simple rather than go out to eat or something like that. I like one pot stuff. So I'm going to add a little bit of water to here, get the rest of that tomato out of there, and that will allow me to just throw the noodles right in there and have them cook in that stuff. Be right back. So we'll add this, already kind of simmering, plenty of heat obviously, and I'm going to give this a stir, cover it back up and let it come to a full simmer. Looks like I might need to tend my fire a little bit here, getting a little smoky. Let's see what we got going on here. So the fire's burning out on the sticks a little ways into the firebox. That's normal. Happens just about every time I've used one of these. I think I'm going to add one more stick, and I think that will probably do it for fuel for this. So just a few sticks probably, we'll see. Famous last words. And I should be able to get a meal out of this. Now, a couple questions I had about this is that if you go to, say, a place that's got a village bakery, or a lot of places in the world will have like one oven made of clay and bricks and things like this, and they'll start it in the morning, and you'll cook stuff that needs to be really hot then, And then as the day goes on, people bring in other things that are cooked at lower temperatures, like breads and things like this. One of the reasons they're able to do that is that that clay and brick absorbs a lot of that heat and radiates it the rest of the day. So that was one of the things that I thought was pretty clever about that stove tech, was that it had a clay liner. The one that I had a metal insert down the inside to protect the clay from, you know, like sharp sticks and things like this. But when they switched over to the insulation, I wondered whether or not that effect would still be going on. And if it isn't, then how much efficiency are you losing in terms of heat going in versus how long it's going to hold the heat. Now this thing, just in this little bit of time, has gotten pretty warm, so I'm assuming that the insulation has absorbed the heat that it's going to, and then will radiate it back over time. It stays hot for quite a while, so you are getting some residual heat and cooking and things like that just by virtue of heating up the insulation. Another question I had is, how can you prove that you're actually burning secondarily or gasifying the wood? And without some, you know, pretty amazing scientific instrumentation, including, you know, standardized fuel and, you know, some probes that measure things along the way, I don't know how you prove that. Of course, I don't know how you disprove it either. Suffice it to say that it burns pretty well, and it burns down to you know, a papery, like thin ash. So it is burning the wood pretty completely, but as to whether or not it's actually doing secondary burning or wood gasification, I can't say. We're just about at a simmer here. Give it a little stir so that there's no risk of anything sticking to the bottom. So another question you might be asking is, why do I need this thing? Well, you really don't. It's nice to have. You're probably never going to backpack with this, and if you do, it'll be in a big group and one person will be responsible for carrying this. It's pretty bulky, it does get sooty and stuff, and it would probably mess up the inside of your pack unless it was cleaned very well. So I see this as like something you would have in like a long-term camp, you know, out hunting or something like this, where you didn't want to spend all your time getting fuel and more wanted to spend your time hunting rather than all of that. Or in places where there is limited fuel, or where you need a really contained fire. So if there's a high fire risk, you know, the fire is pretty well contained in there. I'm going to push in some of the kindling here, make sure we're still doing what we're supposed to do. Have to do my job too for this to work. One thing that happens though is that these wings can get stuck a little bit if you're not watching that. So I'm at a good simmer here. I'm going to give it another stir just to make sure nothing sticks. Like I said, that's a very hot fire. Now I'm just going to add some noodles directly to this, and hopefully they will cook and soak up all of that goodness so that I can truly make a one-pot meal. The other place you might use something like this would be, you know, if you lived in a city and kind of wanted to have a fire-cooked meal. I know that's odd, but you know, when I was living in cities and not in the country, every once in a while you just love the taste of food that's cooked over a fire, and this can definitely scratch that itch for you with minimal effort. I might add a little bit more fuel. I'm going to check here. I'm going to put this back on. We've probably got 10-20 minutes of cooking left at the most with those noodles. Let's look. Yeah, so I'm going to add a little bit more fuel. There's no sense in running out, and I've used hardly any relative to what I would do cooking over a campfire, so don't really feel bad about doing that. And that will for sure give us a nice hot fire and cook certainly for the rest of the time we need it to. So I used you know, a little bit of wood, still have quite a bit left, and honestly I probably didn't need to add all of that. So it is very efficient in terms of cooking. Another thing to say is that it's just cool. Like if you show up somewhere, you know, where you're car camping or whatever, and your buddies have all this stuff, and you show up with one of these, they're gonna ooh and ah, and there's always something to be said for that. Historically, this same principle, you can see that in something called the Dakota fire pit. If you don't know what that is, there are plenty of videos on YouTube that show that. It's a way to have a fire that's contained with minimal smoke and pretty efficient at that. Way to cook things. Also, probably, I don't know, at least a third of the world cooks over something like this. Most of the time that I've seen them, they're a lot more primitive than this. It might just be like a 5-gallon bucket with a hole cut in the side of it. Or I'll show some examples of it. Sometimes I've seen it where they have the same kind of design, same kind of principle, only they've molded kind of a clay oven that they can put the stuff on top, and then they can also bake in it. And given that you've got about a third of the world cooking on these, it's nice to have that cooking be not their entire day in terms of gathering the fuel, and then also not, if you use less fuel, you're not, ooh, it's hot. You're not going to deforest like this huge section of land just for one person to eat, or one family to eat. So like I said, that is a very, very hot fire. Getting a little smoke there. Maybe I'll check and make sure I don't need to push in a little more. I'm actually going to take one of these out just because that's so hot. So deduct this from our fuel usage total. Burning very, very hot. Move the camera just a little bit so you can maybe see it from a different angle. I'm just feeding the rest of this in there. Oh yeah. So that's going to be plenty of fuel for sure. I'm probably just going to take this lid off because that's so incredibly hot that now watch, it's going to splash all over the place. So types of food that work real well on here, it's fantastic with a wok. So if you like stir fries, you'll use even less fuel to make it. This is kind of a soup slash stew. That'll feed obviously my entire family for probably a couple days. But you know, when you've got a group of people and you're cooking, it makes more sense to make something like a soup or a stew. So if you go to a lot of places, you'll see that a lot of the kind of native cuisines feature things like curries or a lot of soups and things like that. Also, if you've got like a critter, like a chicken or something, you're going to get a lot more bang for your buck making that chicken into a stew than you are grilling it. Not to mention that the chickens we get in the United States are very different from a chicken like that's walking around in some jungle around a hut and like eating worms and stuff. That's very tough meat, and grilling that is going to get you shoe leather. And don't ask me how I know that. So that's it. I have absolutely no doubt that I have plenty of fuel here. These noodles are getting there. They got a little ways to go. But maybe I'll turn the camera off and show you when it's all done here. So there we are, it's all cooked. I didn't need to add any more fuel. In fact, it's still burning. So I'd say success. This is going to be tasty. If you have any questions, be sure to leave them in the comments. I try to answer stuff. Sometimes I'm not as good as I could be. Anyway, thanks for watching.